Professor, I want to start with you, if that's all right. I saw you mentioned in your written testimony something that we looked at a hearing that we held last year, one that I called back when I was the chairman of the committee still. Among other things, we looked at competition and the state of competition in areas where consumers suffer as a result of two firms having control of every part of the Adtech space. And my office is currently working on legislation on this issue to address some of these problems, the conflicts of interest and competition that arise in digital advertising. Do you think this is an area where Congress could step in and solve the problem?
Yeah, thank you for the question. As I mentioned in my bio, I've been consulting with the state of Texas since August of 2019 on the Texas versus Google litigation. So I know firsthand, having followed this issue extremely closely, how real the problem is. And so, yes, I think the answer, litigation obviously is one possible solution. It's extraordinarily expensive. It takes an extremely long time. There are inordinate delay efforts on the part of Google with respect to that. You have introduced a venue legislation that will try to help expedite the process with respect to litigation, which I think is a great idea. But to answer your question, I think, there's no regulatory context whatsoever here to deal with the advertising, online display advertising market. It is right now, antitrust is doing all of the work, right? And so one possible solution that one could think about would be to think about how the similar conflict of interest have been addressed in the financial markets and how we could impose similar conflicts of interest concerns and limitations in the online display advertising markets. So, for example, you cannot own the New York Stock Exchange, right, and then be a monopoly player on the stock exchange as a broker, right? You cannot basically funnel all of the trades that happen on your brokerage firm into your preferred exchange, right? Right now, Google has exactly that issue. So there is no best interest duty. There is no duty of best execution. There's no limitations on insider trading. All of those kinds of things happen. And if you had a strict requirement that if you're going to own an exchange, you can't be a broker on either the ad or the sell side, that would be a useful addition, I think.
And yet currently they are. They
are definitely.
They run the exchange.
Yes, exactly.
And they're a broker.
Just to give you an example.
Both sides.
The NYSE is owned by Intercontinental Exchange, and they earn $3.6 billion from revenue from their exchanges. Google earns that in 5 days.
Right. And it's my concern is not with how much money they earn or how they do it. And it's not unlawful to be a monopolist in this country, but it is unlawful to acquire or maintain monopoly status through anti-competitive conduct.
Right.
It's hard to me to imagine a circumstance in which one can own the exchange platform and also be a buyer, seller, broker, dealer, and whatever other positions they might occupy in the meantime. It's hard for me to imagine how one firm can maintain all of those positions without something anti-competitive going on in purpose and effect. Ms. Hine, I'd like to turn to you next. You and your colleagues decided to sell your first company to an acquirer. Can you explain to my colleagues and to me why any entrepreneur would choose to sell their company rather than to continue to build it with an eye toward eventually going public?
Yes, I can do that, Senator. Thank you for your question. The circumstances of each company are unique, and it depends on how strong of a position one can build in the market. As we're discussing here, it depends on the technology and how market access works. And oftentimes there are also hurdles, like I spoke about in my testimony, Sarbanes-Oxley, for example. What that kind of regulation does is that it requires a significant amount of capital even to access the capital markets. So currently, startups that want to go public, typically before they go public, raise an additional $20 million in order to then be able to get over those hurdles, everything that they need to do. So with startup companies, it's very unique where they go, and I think that it should not be regulation that determines who I sell the company to or whether I can go public with it.
Deb, can I ask one follow-up there?
Of course.
It does sound like a somewhat similar situation to where you see a lot of pharmaceutical startups heading. Is, as a result of FDA regulations and the capital demands on competing, on starting and finishing clinical trials, most small innovators have to get acquired in order to scale up. And it sounds like you're describing a similar phenomenon.
Yes, definitely. There are a lot of regulatory hurdles, and obviously there's reason for a lot of these, but my point here is that there are a lot of unintended consequences, and I am afraid that my livelihood, which exists in creating innovative companies, will be impacted by regulations that I have to abide by, and I can't do anything to control the different thresholds. For example, is the $600 billion going to stay in place or being lowered, as Dr. Moss suggests? That all makes it very scary for people like me.
Thank you.